Okay, good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Red Wheelbarrow Poetry Society. Our invited poet this evening, I'm sure you all know, is Ari Sitas. Ari, I don't know if you're going to introduce the poems sort of before you read, but you definitely have that liberty. But what I do know is that your most recent project is titled Giraffe Humming. And then there was a poetry collection in 2021, Mapping Gondwana. Whenever you're ready, if you want to introduce your poems, please feel free to do so. After the reading, we will have some questions and answers, and then a short break.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you for the invitation. I'm a new boy in town, relatively speaking. Most of my creative life has been in Johannesburg and Durban. And poetry came late, at around in the late 80s. Before then, I was very much involved in performance, in theater, in movements that were happening then. And it was a moment of exuberance because cultural work was spreading like wildfire everywhere. And it was kind of a wonderful moment. And then, as we all know, the Civil War started in KwaZulu-Natal. And then, it became a bit of a surreal experience where I needed late at night to just sit down and reflect on it. And that's where I wrote my first poem at around 1986, 87. And there was a good response to it. And I continued, although I never thought of myself as a poet then. But then 1989, kind of just Congress of South African Writers starts and grabs my stuff and puts it out as one of the first books that came out then. And I didn't know what happened to me then. It was very confusing. But starting, there, it was an attempt to work through the kind of contradictions of the experience of being in that space, being involved in all kinds of issues, and then lacking the words during the day to express it. So my first ever poem was called, obviously, Etequini. And it goes something like this. There is an expanse of green and dust, hemmed in by cane and a stitchwork of hills. There, here, this expanse, spattered by waves, pummeled by sunblasts, stewing in sweatiest liquid, yes, waves whose necks are thick set with corrugation. There, here, is this expanse that claims me, my hell. From here, from these hell's orders, Tomato Street, Guava Avenue, Molasses Valley, Steel Shavings Township, Glue Location, Masala Hill, melting and boiling. There is no stench of heaven left to prize. There is a sky, yes, blue-like, gray-like, alien-like, weighing downwards, pouring sweat and dust downwards, riveting all aground downwards, yes, with only sideward escapades. There, here, mechanical bullfrogs and cicadas grind away. And sometimes wounded cars cough by, pierced by assegais, and sometimes surfers emerge from the mouths of microwave ovens. And always, life continues like the sound of splintering glass. This hell, hemmed in, its forced geometry of concrete boils spreads outwards, sidewards, in its rashes of sackcloth of shack or specification matchbox to touch the stitchwork of hills as near the docks the boss drives by in his Shepstone Benz, as his boys load the Chiwayo skull as cargo, here, there, confined, where visions of heaven subsided long ago, with the arrival of sails creaking under a hyperload of sparrows, here, there, in this maze of splintering glass, this expanse that claims me, in these infernal flame waves tanning my fate, I was lost there smiling, porcelain smiles, and waving oxhide kites. So that was the first ever poem trying to describe the experience. Now, okay, I won't go through many of the early ones. One, though, because a friend insisted I had to read it. And I don't see him there, but fine. It's called Evening Tides, from the first collection. When the sun sets behind Kwamashu and further back, past the thousands of hills, and the cattle are herded, and the children are rustled inside, and the mothers count them again, removing thorns, lice, birdshot with caring hand. And we feel alongside our shoulders, making sure that our head still weighs our neck down right through our spine. And the descending gray disappears, the shark fin, the boatyard, the Casper. We're left with only our fierce loves and the sounds of hooks that we tear out from each other's hearts. So that was from the first collection. And then, okay, as always happens, then you get confused. You don't know what to do with yourself afterwards. You know, after you thought you said everything you had to say, you know, in terms of poetry, and of course you're stupid at that time, but you get through those feelings. And I thought, okay, I was launched, had big audiences, you know, I got used to these big things that were happening around the Congress of South African Writers. I thought, what the hell am I doing in public now? So I decided to move closer to song, closer to trying to craft lyrics that could be almost sung, or that could communicate with an audience much easier. And that experiment produced some work that was recorded, was performed, was sung, and so on. And that also, again, put in another collection because there wasn't too much of it. So anyway, I'll read one of those just to give an example of how I moved towards more song-like structures. This one is called Crooning. We heard from the lives we will never live, those better lives, those lives elsewhere. We go dying each day a little bit more, drunk from the shame we inhale, flattened here. We go dreaming of invisible lungs, balloon pump-upping our threadbare skins. We go spooning in here the filth of the city, meekly smiling and escaping too soon into the alleys to croon. We go crooning, sink into the hour, the twilight hour, devour the night, guide old jelly roll your spite away. Father worked across the bay where they used to cut blubber and meat from whales. Swear to his last, his hands sweated out cod liver oil. And on his last, our lives started sinking. And me, his little brown sailor with my Sunday blue and white collar and hat, entered the fish life, the payroll of bones, the hurt of the other side, the wrong side, the crusted beard, salt life, apprentice to croon. We go crooning, sink into the hour, the twilight hour, devour the night, guide old jelly roll, the spike away. I weep for the mermaid, tattooed or eaten at a tuna and parsley or admired on the porthole's mouth. We hope as we moan, as we stir in the murk, in the voodoo rites of factory pots and pans and molasses. We despair of the lies of the other life and tear open all angels, reading their innards for signs. We snap off the wings and we start flapping and pacing about, incanting our lost years and speed off to croon. We go crooning, sink into the hour, the twilight hour, devour the night, guide all, jelly roll your spite away. We heard from the lives we will never live, those better lives elsewhere. That was one example of this. It was my people's most favorite one. One was called Mango Tango, but we won't do that now. And then I got into a mad period where for 7 years, I researched Ethiopia and the life and the lives and the art and the poems around Rimbaud's presence in Ethiopia, because I got pissed off with French accounts of how a genius of poetry gets crushed in this land of nothingness. And I said, excuse the language, fuck you. That was not a land of nothingness. And I tried to 7 years, because I knew that if I had to write something like this, I had to know as much as any Ethiopian knew, and I would still be an outsider, a Ferengi doing stuff. So then came, after 7 years, slave trades, thanks to Rob Barrett and Deep South, which Apparently, I haven't written something as good as that since. So it's okay, but I won't bore you with this one. It's too long. You know, it can take us a week just to go through it. But just give you a sense, an example of what exists there. Because it was a time also of collapse of Africa. Ethiopia survived, but everything was collapsing around there. And this is a little piece from that long, more than 100-page poem, which Chimurenga, by the way, has re-released last year. Okay, or something like this. These evil times, autumn already, with the sun already bruised, ignored and hated by the new gods, and remembered by the old, shining on our forgotten cities, fog-lashed, crowd-blinded, unsuspecting of these last momentous hours, ridiculed by the tribes and bards, thinned out to bone, plagued, mosquitoed, as we sit waiting for the darker hours, so we can go and for the remaining random muted stars. All is in flight. The paper birds we made, dabbed with paint, glued up with mulch from flour, flapped past and are gone. The Manx stole past, clutched book, bent yellow gate and page, and we, cursed by each frostbite, damned by each psalm or poem, impure, gather the animals and search for the other pasture, the next spring, some promise of flint, of porridge. All is in flight. Left is the sound of nature's justice, the eternal jaws of the eternal chattering of ants. There was a cart, more of a boat inside a dreamland cart, actually, that always plowed on, despite mist or cold, towards the brilliant, fanciful city of our hope. The city was unhaunted by the sights of all those cut. It was without the tear, the soaked bread, the shrill sound of a shovel against a stone, metal on stone. The city which had our household, its wooden rafters, fragrant still from a memory of root, its plants and horse, its air and kin interplaying alongside the thresher who insisted she loved her harvest, where each stone marked the pathway of a dream. I have built the cart with twine and sackcloth, a rounded wheel inside my soul. I'm waiting for autumn's breeze, flap of a wing and song, and surge to my untraded home and lands. So that is from slave trades. And then, okay, then people said, oh, what the hell are you doing in Ethiopia and so on? South Africa, we're in its transition now. There's the reconstruction and development program, and we're having progress and so on. So I started running around trying to experience the reconstruction and development program. And that made me write some horrible poems. The RDP poems were published by Fatima Mir and Madiba Press then. And it was, yeah, I made lots of friends and lost some very important ones because what I had to say was not so nice sometimes. Anyway, I'll give you an example of what got me into trouble. It's called Reconstruction from the RDP poems. Working in the debris, I rescued a hinge and then found another off the piles by the gate and felt that something was lacking as I stumbled into the cabin through the cakey mud and the tufts of green weeding the path. That first night, I played with them like puppets' mouths between index and thumb, clacking to the rhythm pulsing the wailing reeds on the stereo, and felt haunted by what was lacking there still. In the morning by the shed, at the pile of bones my sculptor friend gathered, so much bone left in the fields, he used to say, where the animals get cut, and clean them off the marrow and grime. To work, to work. I chose two sets, roughly similar, giraffe or camel, whale or ape. Who knows these days? Like an osteographer, I set shape and connected each set with the hinges, creating elbows. And it was good. Sleep that night was short, too much dream and mist, restlessness and spleen, and after the fruit bats bolted at dawn, and the flies lifting off the greening haze invaded, and the farms around the estate with the dews revived stench, as if perverted flocks of oxen flew low, depositing the dung and more, I dismantled the broken sculpture a Cuban doctor left with us and took its frame of wattle, smoothed its edges, carved better the sockets, and created the frame and shoulders for my moving arms of bone. To make the hands was sheer exhaustion. 2 electrical twills fitted as wrists around the bone, and in their groove, the base of all marionette hands we used to make during our drama days, the supple fingers and the gracious twist strung through with copper wire, pulled tight around the bone pieces to a point through the center of the shoulder frame. Felt those frail and vulnerable limbs outstretched, beg and chastise with subtle grace, and was excited, running to the sea, panting, puffing on the pathways to the water, dark, angry, smacking its sparkles and little cataracts on rock. Far simpler was to craft energy and motion. A crude 3-stroke motor with its assent, deny, yes, no logic could be battery propelled and run through wire to bring the limbs to life. I refused the humiliation of corporate cells, set about to place a spine on a chair and fix the frame and place the system on a double converter, one linked to the solar panels, stealing sun rays for the pull and shove, one linked to an aluminium box, inside it a fluid of chemical reactions, a kind of stomach, if you please, to process organic food or mulch, and at the end of the day, trembling with excitement, handed life, animation, motion over to my beautiful new friend. The box was busy working through the night, digesting, creating a hearth on the porch for all creatures of the night to gather, had to chase a scorpion off the frame, and then sample sounds to construct a humming, a chattering voice to blend it with the gestures of the limbs, added a sadder loop, a frail crescendo, an operatic voicing for the dying of the solar rays during the rain or night, and another loop, more blues and pain as the aluminium stomach ran out of feed and timed it to my friend's arms and their cadences. Oh, the last day was pure fever. First, the stockpiles of bone produced a vulnerable cranium for a head. I wish I knew it was a deer or a goat or a camel. Damn it, let it even be a dolphin skull, I moaned. What do I know of metaphysics or zoology? Jagged and cracked, gluing all kinds of padding to the frame, I unfurled over the head like a soft condom her skin over her shoulders and breasts, through the arms, and all the way past the metallic stomach and waist, a skin crafted through in hemp, and although it tore by the jawline and chest, the right elbow and fist, it added to the frail beauty of my friend. Then came the red dress, and the touch of charcoal and paint, and the draft and dab the lines of fine features. When she murmured and sang to my gathering friends the day after, my wits and street fighters, my friends who sell and buy, the ones who play witness, the survivors who dream, the drinkers and thinkers and eaters of swine, of nectar and blues, they all roared in approval and named her Beatrice, Isabella, Nandi, Sita, the beautiful unborn, and teased and coaxed, lit cigarettes and placed them in her mouth, and she murmured on and struck such notes of anguish. I chased them. I hated chasing them, but I had to chase them. Past the gate and returned to look at her alone, in a life beyond a senseless new landscape of reconstructed hope. So that my friends did not like much. Anyway, and then, but it was times of delivery. And I had to do something about the times of deliverance. Okay. When the cloud cover passes over this 5-rank town, searching for respite from the wind that goats it past the moon, and the tarmac, warm from the day's subtropical chore, yearns for the land crabs and frogs to return, I know that this is the place where language must have died. When memory banks declare certainties in undigested drones, oh yes, and tremulous voices, heavenly choirs, briars, pyres, scraps, stop that shit, collect copper wire. Dear keeper, I'm a communist because I recall crabbed songs, frog rain. I keep the calendar on a green page. Hello, Mr. Grief. Here comes my goofy sorrow. Hello, Mr. Poet. Grief here. Have you some tear for me to borrow? There is an open fire where the trail ended and the spoor calcified, where some mongrel snout prowls its longings, plus some unwanted spume in this 4.99 plus 1 cent place, with the tongue used to twist lash in time constriction. Hello, Mr. Grief. Here comes your tear to borrow. Hello, Mr. Poet. Grief here. At what interest does I liquid sorrow? That's why I'm a communist and keep a calendar on a green page, seated here, naked in the chemical compounds of this damp afternoon that masticates the wings of tiny predatory birds, listening to the chipping of ozone granules. Behind the dark beards of cloud, I try to clone the nanoparticles of feeling on this war-torn guitar. Oh, the roads we have built, boys. Oh, the droughts we have mitigated. Oh, the books we have almost balanced, boys. One came back, hit the gun, and waited. Another wandered the streets, disco scattered, talking to himself. Another robbed a bank, and then another bank. Another wandered the countryside, cracked heart, puffed a torso. The rest was moved by wheelbarrow cursing. Another found the gun the first one hid. Another drowned, searching for a tap. The third paid for the posh coffee not teak. The fourth turned worm and hired out the wheelbarrow to taxi. The one who scattered talk pushed it, and the new one with the gun took it. So we crawled through the thicket, listening to the delivering all of us of our basest needs. Oh, the roads we have built, boys. Oh, the books we have balanced, boys. Hello, Mr. Poet. Here's a sorrow. Oh, you're very welcome, Mr. Grief. Tomorrow has been mortgaged. You're stunningly free to borrow. Oh, boys, the drought, boys, the drought, boys. And the trains, and how gravy stains. So that was the deliverance. Yeah. So some people didn't like it at all. And then, of course, it was tough times. And there was another horrible poem I did in that collection, was called Bombing Iraq. It's a very long one, but I'll do a few extracts from it just to see where we go. Come in. Come in. Welcome to my little show. Mind your step. Don't touch the props. Don't touch the piano. I know it's not tuned. Leave the animal cages alone. And don't touch the beautiful cackle heads. Hard to make. Don't talk to the ghosts in the shadows. They will have their turn. Here are the maps. This is Iraq. The buckets of sand are for your toes. The meat on the table is real. Don't eat it. It's raw. We will get to char it much later. Please, some respect. It takes years to gather. But draw the dark curtains. Place the moon up high. Light it. Talk to it. Dribble a string of red from the edge of its wet mouth. Get to the showerhead, boy. Pelt us some rain. Look at these dancing legs, this that dancing. Look at my fiddling thumb, worn to the bone. Draw the dark curtain, switch on the noisy tape. Gunshot, firework, volcano. Let it come. Blood, ovaries, solvents. Let animals loose. Let the meerkat or leopard boy pace about in the thinning light. Dawn stalker, beach sand stalker, curse you, son. All I can offer you is my skin to burn. I share the seagull's impatience, a tiptoe on fishbone, on the leftovers from the revels of the night before, from the scrap pianos of the deep, the rhythm pulse at waves, from the lungs of the stalking ibises, trumpeting soprano. Hi-de-ho, they say, the ibises trumpeting tenor shrill. Hi-de-da, on the shore, announcing you in the cloud-free morning. Curse you, son. Africa's traitor, faminizer, floodder, droughter. I've had my fill of umbrellas at the lines of aid queues, counting the wilt, the crack, the cutting of the daisy cutter bombs. I've had it with the burial cloth, the burial clad, the hymn, the shroud. On this sun-infested landscape, the stretch of hands counting the bacilli, bombing Iraq. Yes. And then I will cut the story a bit short and move it a little bit further in the story. On the seventh day, I surrendered. I simply ran out of glue, ran out of the flour to make the glue, ran out of the water to mix the flour to make some glue. I looked at the pieces of flesh, the torso, limb, liver, shin bone, and could do nothing. But history knows I tried at least for 6 days. I tried, I swear. And she is my witness that I persisted, that I did glue the pieces together and set them off to march again. And at night, as you know, the bombing would start. Each strike the better, designed so much better, to tear it all up. And I would start again. Flour, 1 cup of water and mix to glue the new pieces together. Even I was short of shards, of hands, of toes, of sinew, again and again. I tried my best, and I tried, as long as they managed to march. And then, moving on in the poem, unlike my elders. I cannot ask who piled the mounds of Coke cans and the mounds of skulls in this darkening space. I know this room. I know who brought them here. The wheelbarrow is still poised in the dimming sun-freed light. And in the darkness over there, I cannot ask after the clicking sound. I know I've met the dark-clad aunts. I recognize the knitting. The dead have time knitting. I know the mounds are dented. I know what life has passed through here. The clues are everywhere. The piano is still warm from the pummel, and the cross-hand rhythm it endured. And there, those are the last remaining prison bars my poet friends pedaled to survive. The mounds are there. It was a monumental effort that rolled them up the flights of stairs. And then I move to my protest. And I protest. What a protest. I've paid to your latest brochures. And I'm dissatisfied because I have come to demand my rights, my democratic choice. I protest about your cluster bomb that spread so wide to maim the entire street, mixing my own with my moneylender's ribcage. I'm dissatisfied with the post-napalm vaporizing shit that burns so slowly after the first grimace, raising a collective howl. I demand a post-shock, post-war, personalized bomb. I demand ideological consistency from you. One person, one necklace, one fire. One customized singular seepage from the final charred mound. I protest about the daisy cutter tool, which does not distinguish between a child's stem and mine. I demand my own sensual stamina, my own diversity, my own discorporation. Draw dark the curtains. The feminizers of a sun is creeping in. Draw the dark curtains, silence the Zingizi bird, fake some peace at last, as we are bombing Iraq. Thank you. So that was from the RDP poems. And then, then what happened is that 2008, I was placed in India in a very nice place there at the university that's now is under attack by the government there. And I had time to imbibe India. And I thought, how does one really, again, as a stranger like Ethiopia, how does one do it, relate to India in a way that's acceptable to my friends there? And I could really be an outsider, but be also at the same time as well equipped to deal with what I was seeing every day. And that came until thanks to Jules Verne there. I did 80 days around the world, the India section, with all its details, exactly followed the trip on the map of Jules Verne. I saved Aouda from Sati. I tried to get her to London, but it doesn't happen anymore. And I got stuck in India. So the trip was destroyed. And there I am writing a book about 80 days around the world in India section, and just irritating and pleasing my Indian friends. Can understand precisely of something what was going on. I'll give you a little example of what that was about, because it's going to take us on a peculiar tangent. But of course, you have to arrive. And the first poem that opens the collection that UNISA Press published is called Mooring. Harpooning the angel was easy. Cutting him down to the bow, mending him to nail him to the mast was hard. Unfolding his wings to steer against the crosswinds through the Arabian Sea, through Ratnataka was sheer joy. So we sailed, past floating mines, past the coastline with its oil rigs on fire. We saw what Effendi Arthur Rimbaud saw: azure swells, cruel moons, harrowing dawns, unforgiving suns where flotsam pale, ravished, drowned, and pensive men float by. Gibril, Gibril, talking to the angel, we shouted, stick to the saffron side of sea. The green of Pakistan is dangerous. We saw the ships draped in cotton and raw silk, the arrogance of Tata banners and flags, the Filipino crewmen tossing watermelon rinds to hungry sharks, and the red eddies marking the graves of slave ships. And we corked by the last game fish, wrapped in pashmina shawls, followed by fishermen with bait, with hook and sinker, but also sticks of dynamite. And ahoy, land! Gibril, Gibril, angel again, stick to the saffron side of Seattle. The mist lifting its skirt to an indifferent gray. What are the Himalayas? Where is Cochin? The captain brought out the maps, the compass, the GPS, soggy Jules Verne's pages, soggier biscuits. Ahoy, Mumbai! Brought down the mast, folded the wings, loaded the cameras, the SIM cards, easing the boat. Ahoy, Gandhiland's shopping malls! Behind the gunboats, behind the gateway. It is true this, the Taj was on fire. So that was the beginning of this, of getting me into India, and then going through in a rather ridiculous way as a Phileas Fogg of the 21st century, with a Senegalese sidekick being my passepartout, and walking through India and going through the wonders of elephants and all the wonderful things that are happening there. But then India became very serious insofar as we created with Indian poets, composers, musicians, and South African ones, this Insurrections Ensemble. If you want to listen to it, there's a lot of poetry in it, and it's insurrectionsensemble.com, and you get all the stuff that's happened 10 years now, involving music, word, and other things. And a lot of my time has been in doing lyrics for this experiment. And we're talking about 7 CDs later. You know, that stuff is happening. But anyway, so then again, my crazy friends say, okay, India, Ethiopia, you're traveling here, you're traveling there, you know, bullshit. What about here? I thought, okay, I'll do it here. I'll do a thing here, and I'm going to go and do it on a Vespa, and I'm going to go throughout South Africa on a Vespa, and I'm going to do an impressionist piece about what I see everywhere, from the little towns to the big towns, and just try and just get out of this political and kind of just heavy stuff and do impressionism. You know, little brush strokes here and there. Nice words that tickle people, you know, in terms of what you see. But I mean, unfortunately, we don't have that landscape. Unfortunately, it gets more difficult. And in the middle of this exciting adventure, which my friends thought is stupid, and Marikana happened. And that really stuffed me up. So from the Impressionism, all of a sudden it became substantive anger. And the book finally, that's called the Vespa Diaries, is full of both. So I don't know whether it succeeds or not. Some people like it a lot, some people don't like it at all, but that's the fate. Now, I'm going to do 3 poems from here. Imagine me on my Vespa, riding around everywhere and trying to capture every little inch of the country and just put it into words that can impress you. But you never get impressed easily, so I'm going to try my best. The one finally, after 2 breakdowns, and returns to Cape Town, because these poems were written when I was in Cape Town, primarily, finally arrived to the Indian Ocean in the Eastern Cape. This poem is an Indian Ocean reverie. A score of ocean cruises in gloom on a restless sea, cut fresh from the sickle of the Ramadan moon. I admonish the waves to keep quiet. My brain still throttles from the sound of engines and clatter that took me down cliffs at the Hog's Back, past fields of proteas on fire. I sip from my flask and I murmur a deep holy thank you to the wild olive and the fig tree that gave me some shelter and aggravated dreams of nymphs and idiotic braids and streaks of gold in their hair by the dark fane-bush into streams. And come on, I admonish the waves once again. Bloody hell. Finally give these fishermen some flowers. I traveled among prehistoric rocks and trees. That sounds good, doesn't it? Wow. I did so in pelting hail or iced up dew, up down endless hills, and carved my name on an anthill. I was involved in grand heroic acts like that. And now the ocean turns dark and dangerous. I traveled far with a broken compass. The handlebars ate at my palms, and the stockings scarred me. I left large footprints on the red earth when I went to piss. And who knows, one day someone will reconstruct my I heard both shouts and songs from one homestead to another, and sometimes stopped just to pretend I needed something, just to hear someone talk, so I could also hear my voice talk. Words are funny things. They vanish in the wind. The sand here is pure velvet. And by the shiny rocks over there, I see pups chasing their mum to suckle, where I'm sure someone who cares whether they do. I do not know whether anyone cares I walk or crawl this way, unless it is about begging a fag or two. We're all beggars. There is no chapel. This is the chapel, the temple, and the mosque. I traveled. I even danced in a ball in Middleburg and caught a Mascati competition in the backyards of Fisher. This road has no end. And here your memories are rather dumb. They get in the way. The thorn trees are growing fast inside your head in geometric leaps. The wound in the distance from the moon's sickle has opened up for rays. The sun is up. The dew on my tires will dry. Our turn will come. That was my Indian Ocean reverie. And then coming to Durban again was quite an experience. Arriving, and there was an evening song there in Durban in these travels. After a day of stoning and gas, an ancient shore beckons by the ocean's lip. A crowd heaving, sifting through the sand for coins. A happy bulldozer resting after eating up another row of shacks, its jaw nestling by a crab hole. What a fine evening. What a sea, what pulse of insects, tiptoeing to the love-lorn strings of a June cicada. What a tiptoe of tiny birds hurrying in and out of pollen before the blooms shut shop. What a sigh from the darkening mangrove as the crowd picks up the evening song about Lotto, about Amachans, who Lotto Machans, so Lotto Machans, goes the crowd, and I cannot sing. A jagged bamboo knife scraped my throat to sing and remind whom what? About the stars or the strings of mango in between my teeth, about the sneering palm tree, about the price of cloth waving in the breeze on the barb of the casino's fence, how the descending sun wrestles with the shadows of the thousand hills, how past dreams lurk here, how no one remembers that they do, how there is a residue of dream on my frown. The night, very restless in Yanga, is already by the pier, eyes shut, pacing, and murmuring the 11th commandment of a new faith. The beer-stained guards have exhausted their shift, umpiring Sing Stone, the eternal struggle between miners and crows by the rubbish bins. The fisherman has the third bottle of cane, dream of grunters, reek of shad, and complain that no ship was hooked, even though they cast their lines far in their far gardens of foam, and there, the sea's eyelid full of fins, the factory sirens quiet at last, the hooligan moon peers over the bluff, and the horses of the deep get restless. In another time, this would have been the moment for our storytelling friends, but they're gone. Tonight, the ridge and hills will not be on fire. The spring child's last sigh will not be recorded. The salt march will not pass by. The salt, yes, only the salt endures, the salt's around. I tiptoe past the bulldozer. His eyes are moist, dreaming of its earth mother in some abandoned mine. So that was my experience of the Durban beachfront. And okay, you know, the poem from here that went absolutely viral and really made me lose friends and made friends was the Marikana poem. And I won't do the whole thing, but I'll give you an impression of what I tried to do in that poem. The digital images fold as the TV screen fires. The cops, rifles in cabinet, past the third beer, are raging towards bed. The night is quiet. As the smelter has been closed, the only music is of the wind on razor wire. The ears are too shut to hear the ancestral thuds on goat skin. Humanity has somehow died in Marikana. Who said what to whom remains a detailed trifle? The fury of the day has to congeal. The blood has to congeal. I reverse the footage, bringing the miners back to life. In vain. The footage surges back, and the first bullet reappears, and the next, and the next, and the next. I reverse the footage in vain again, and again, and again, in vain. The image of the man in the green shroud endures. Who wove the blanket? What was his name? There are no subtitles under the clump of bodies, no names stapled on the unformed skull. A mist of ignorance also endures, a winter fog woven into the fabric of the kiln. The loom endures too. The weaver is asleep. The land of the high winds will receive the man naked. The earth will eat the stitch back to a thread. What will remain is the image, and I in vain, reversing him back to life on my video recorder to lead the hill to song. In vain, the footage surges back. Another Pondo, another Cruiser Hill, another Wonder Hill. The shooting quietens, another ant hill. And the poem goes on in very complicated ways, and talking about the new furies. And I end it, but now the strike is over. The dead must return to work. And I leave it there, which upset a lot of people. But anyway, it's a poet's duty to do shit like this. And then, just to make things even more complicated, I followed what became Notes for an Oratorio, which was first published in India on Small Things That Fall. And it started from me understanding what's the underside of the Silk Roads. That they're not just Silk Roads that we're witnessing at the moment, but it's an accumulation of hazmat suits, hazardous material suits. And that is the most profitable commodity in the world at the moment. The people who make hazmat suits, the people who make body bags out of the same material, and the people who make refugee tents. Same material, same firm, return to investment 22% a year, much better than silk. So if you want to get somewhere in business, do that. And I started from that because I was sent the poem of somebody before he killed himself, who manufactures the most prized commodity of our 21st century, the iPhone. And this young man wrote a series of poems before killing himself on the factory floor. And he followed 18 women trying to jump out of the top window of their dormitories. 14 of them died, 4 survived, and the company put nets to catch them. So what I'm saying, basically, I started realizing the contradiction between this community in motion that we hold in our hands, this amazing series of apps that allows us to be anything and everything in this world, in this 21st century, also kills. And I follow these threads, and I follow these threads of the silk and why silk weavers commit suicide and the sanitation workers and so on. So I did this thing, and it's too long to get into, and it's also, you have to read a lot of it before it starts making sense on the pieces and so on. But if people want to look at that one, they must. But I promise you, it's not silk roads we're witnessing, it's hazmat highways. And we know it from our nurses with Ebola up there on the coast. And we know it, but we hide it in terms of the kind of things we value. And of course, do we know also some of the best instruments in the world at the moment comes from scrap from battlefields? And you know that the first people who went around in trolleys trying to collect them died because they're using depleted uranium in their bombing these days. It's not the atomic bomb, it's all the bombs have got depleted uranium in them. So the people who go around in shopping trolleys and gather metal, the first crowd of them perished. Now they're walking around with hazmat suits. They prosper. Some of our best instruments, are torn from these strings that are being collected these days because they're cheaper. They're very cheap. Anyway, let me not depress you about the hazmat highways. Let's move to, I don't know whether I've got time, to our last collection, which is a dialogue with, it's called Mapping Gondwana. It was announced at the beginning. And it's a dialogue with a Bengali poet, Subro Bandyopadhyay, who said, let's talk. He's younger than me. And we didn't just talk, we didn't only dialogue, we fought. And this is a collection of poems of our dialogue that's come out with some good reviews at the moment in India. And hopefully I can get it across to South Africa. And, it's it started by me saying how this country aged me and how despairing I was about what is happening between me and the new generation. But I said basically that what it made me do is sing louder as opposed to shut up. So he responded to that, and he wrote a very complicated poem chastising me, about home and homing and what is home and so on. So my first poem is a response to him called Homing. And I'm using a lot of the imagery he used, and I'm fighting. It is within my craft to build a home from muck, mud, and white whipped clay, from ponds, despite the water fleas and shrimp, and smash brocade boxes, as he insisted, to stretch the silk and buffer the inside walls and stretch the weft selvage to selvage. The headless bird can spread the wing to softer landings. And as he insisted that I should fear restless neurons these days, I do not fear restless neurons. Unboxed, I have dealt with ghosts. Their unending contortions will end. They would have yearned anyway for lost sensations. How long could they have jagged along without synapses, their senses numb, even if they were sealed in comfort silk, studded tied in the company of chattering ants? The ants will scatter, the silk will forget the shuttle weave, the home will stand. In these unwelcome times, it's quite up to speak of homing, beyond the tent, bridge or tarpaulin, and show off my knowledge from the teepee to the cabin to the hut, the 3 parts of sand and pebble and 1 cement to ground all flight. I could have crafted a home on rocky outcrops where the backbreakers gather to reach the shore. In the brine, the wind, the iodine scent, away from rotting kelp, and even kept a great white shark as daily pet and feed it bits of torn out language, or on flexible planks above the ebb and tide, and even strung washing lines to dry up cormorant feather or laundered shirt, and use pumice stone to scrub out glass dust, amorphous silica, as you say, anything that oozes out of eccrine glands. The point is that the restless you of youth is not returning home, unconscious of the fact that you are. There was ever never there a home. So that was my response. And then we go on. He says something about, why can't I always do tempests, and I do all that. How about an anti-tempest? Can that? Okay. Large sheets of corrugated iron and flap the sound of an impending storm, surely. And the abandoned tiger masks can scare the crows that raid abandoned crops. Wood yanked of rafters, soiled in tar and paraffin, can sleek river and burn the sea, but drafting a counter-tempest demands new skills and equipment. It is the silence of a void so calm that drains all breath. It is the end of our petty inhale-exhale. It is the end of all that breathes in or breathes quite out. It is the final sigh of all that oxygen. It is the end of oxygen as such, the dull sounds of a careless multiverse that grinds away. It is the soundless spinning of archaea around arrogant nuclei. It is about atoms splitting dead, is or could be gods or God. It is the void that we avoid. That's what it is. The flap of a crow, of a crow's wing, is the storm's naissance, is sheer music. Give me the tempest. That was my response, whether we can do the anti-tempest. And then he chucked Tagore at me, and the Bengali tradition of Tagore, and I loved it, but I mean, I have my issues with Tagore, and this is my fight with him and Tagore, after Tagore. Neither light nor sky, nor the bast of trees to make paper, but carbon. Statues topple their faces prone on earth, a shroud of dust, shrouded city, pink sounds of a morn, higher loud hailers, some said, higher earmuffs, gloom in death, in dust and profit, more carbon, sulfur dioxide, higher 5 million face masks, find the guy ropes for the oxygen tent, the mouthpiece for the gas mask, paper the fractured parts with cigarette filters, keep the windows shut, work in goggles, hide the odor of the sweated undershirt, a flower in a vase of perfume water, sir, just my palms astride, quotation marks in between my arms, life, above the humming of drones, above the wrecked beehive, below, birds raid the empty dining halls, the city a ruined temple, the traffic thin and horn, a hymn, the frost freezing the ink, the pen sits limp, Mr. Tagore, on marble, on stone unformed, around, burn, slash, burn, diktats, keep on stewing perfume, the human industrial vats. Order the gods back. We need some explanation. Stop the temples riding out on fancy limousines, impose the census, give oxygen masks to those who tick the right box, the only box. The rowboat, you said, sir, the very boat sunk in the vastness called ocean. The freedom of the wave, the freedom from the bondage of words you ask for, we defer. What you have scribbled on cigarette packets needs sails, only death sails and sails inside us. But at least we need the fiction. We who have made strangers of our sisters, strangers of our brothers, protest. Worship has impoverished the word. So that was my answer to Tagore. And we go to, yeah, sorry, we're almost there. No, I will not do this one. I will do another one. Paddle to the mangrove swamp. After dark rain, grim hail. The Rico War, another war, yes, on the morning show. Quick hop past radio signal, quick pulse and drum. The burst of beat past the dune. I sat in the face of an upcoming sun to mend the day. To tame a seahorse, perhaps. To admire the glide, the mastery of the kite, the wingspan, the hurl of its hunt. I unsaddle the years, can plow deep rents upon my back. You may ask, what now? You may observe too that the plantations of eternal springs and harvests have been pawned. And the workshops of a generous knock and mend pawned too. The pawn shop thrives. The owner has gulped the bird's milk. The bird is stuffed. A totem on the mantelpiece. A tonal sounds like cancer cells up down the damaged, frailed aorta. But it is time to barter hardship for delight, as you say. Switch on the torch, the light, the star, steal candles from unsuspecting gods. It will always be too late for a retreat. Slow down, those hurried steps to the unknown. The unknown will not run away. The ocean will rise, but will not blunder. It is time to saddle up the seahorse, perhaps, outpace the dolphin, do some stupid thing, mock the stub-nosed shark. In poise, not haste. The rain was good. The maize has grown a beard. The corn has cobbed. Struggle continues. That was another one of my responses. And then towards the end of saying, we have to end this dialogue. Enough. We have to end this. Before the monsoon rains and the floods come, the drones have not reached us yet. We have to imagine what and where without them. We have to see through the thicket, read stars, row the distances, plow fields, hunt for metaphors, seed the verse, water the seed to verse. We agreed that our homes were broken, even if our bodies held a bit. And our mouths were caked with mud. The strange birds that circled our fields wrecked at night the scarecrows, and the tsunami, as we know, salted the fields, after all, to crag. Yet we persist. We lighted the tunnels with candles of the humble art. We sealed off the openings to muffle the screaming, big clots as we are. Out there, beyond the tunnels, there is screaming. We know there is screaming. I light the candle. A trillion ragas muffle the screaming, or try to. I know there is screaming, but a verse up to its knees in water, seeding. And that's where I ended this. So that was the end. Now I'm busy on a next cycle, but it's not ready yet. And we continue making noises, holding loud hailers, keeping people on their toes, shouting when we have to. And we just write and write, because we're bequeathed to loud hailer lives. And we go on, croak on, and hopefully somebody listens. Thank you. I think I will stop here. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ari. Perhaps we could just unmute ourselves and give Ari a round of applause.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you for your loud. I like that word. For your loud, potent, intoxicating, powerful poems. I'm sure that many of us have questions and comments, but I'll first stop the recording and then you could just indicate by raising your hand if you have a question for Ari.